Welcome to 91.9 Public Affairs. I'm Micca Terrell. Emotional, shocking, even terrifying. That's how many of us have described what we've seen unfold in Afghanistan recently on the news, where we've seen the takeover by the Taliban happening right before American forces withdrew from the country. It's been more than 1 month since that all began to unfold. So why is our conversation we're about to have important right now? More than ever, because chances are you are a veteran or you know someone who is. U.S. Census figures show that here in Montgomery County, there are 26,000 veterans living. And at Fort Campbell, of course, about 1,000 there, plus the active duty military, which are about 13,000 people. So a good share of those folks, again, have been deployed to Afghanistan and seen what happened there. Many of them are now working to adapt to get back to civilian life by attending college here at Austin Peay or working in the community. The mental and emotional toll of what all they've seen and been near is, of course, overwhelming at times. And that's where our guest today, retired Major General Walt Lord, Austin Peay's military advisor in residence, comes in and helps out. Thank you so much for joining us, Walt, today and telling us about the options that we have for assistance for them. So let's start out with a little bit more about you. Please tell us about your background. Obviously, you've been to Afghanistan and seen and been with folks there.
I have. Micah, thank you so much for having me here. It's a great pleasure for me to join you this morning. I was born and raised in a working class neighborhood in Philadelphia, South Philadelphia, to a family of 6. And I just always knew that I wanted to serve. I can't tell you why. I just knew that I wanted to do that. So I enlisted at 17, went off to a small military school outside of Philadelphia to be commissioned, and went on to serve 36 years in our Army. The last 5 of which I was at the Pentagon. Retired in 2018, and although I never served at Fort Campbell, and we had never seen Clarksville, we stumbled upon this great little town and decided it would be a great place to make our forever home. Now, where my Afghanistan story comes in is, as a colonel, I was the chief of staff of the Pennsylvania National Guard. I worked for the Adjutant General, who commanded the Pennsylvania National Guard and was also responsible for veteran services for, at that time, 1.1 million veterans in Pennsylvania. And the boss called me in one morning and said, okay, you've been with me for a couple of years now. It's time to talk about your next assignment. I'm going to submit a packet to nominate you to become a brigadier general, to become a general officer. And I'm going to send you downtown to the 28th Infantry Division to be the deputy commander, a division of around 14,000 soldiers. And I think she read my face as soon as she told me that, because at that point, many of the soldiers, a growing majority of that division, had deployed to either Iraq or Afghanistan. I had been to Bosnia, but I hadn't deployed to a combat theater. And I told her, ma'am, I appreciate that and I'm honored, but I can't go and lead those soldiers who have deployed if I haven't deployed myself. And she laughed a little bit and said, okay, I'm going to let you do this, but I don't have any colonel requirements for a deployment right now. So you're going to have to talk to your friends and find yourself a deployment. And I did that. I reached out to some friends at National Guard headquarters in D.C., and stumbled upon a fantastic assignment as the director and senior mentor at the newly established Afghan War College in Kabul, in downtown Kabul. So every day for 6 months, 4 others on my team and I got into a couple of vehicles, drove down one of the most harrowing roads in the Kabul area to our little Afghan compound, where we mentored 21 senior officers who were going through their war college.
What was it like to see those Afghan soldiers go through that training in that kind of background that you're talking about, again, where they're probably, again, concerned for their lives every day, right?
They really were, and it was very interesting. The course curriculum was sort of a blended curriculum of the U.S. War College and the British College of Defense Studies. But the physical aspects of it, as you mentioned, Micah, some of our students lived out in the villages around Kabul and in other places, and they were literally frightened about putting a uniform on and leaving their home every morning and making the trek to our compound where the school was. So probably half of them would come in their traditional Afghan civilian garb and change into a uniform that they kept at the school.
And what kind of support did you offer them to help them feel, like safe once they were there, and that what they were doing was for the better good?
It was a joint effort for our safety there at the compound. We actually had 10 French soldiers as well, because there was another senior level school that was there, and they mentored that school. But because there were 5 Americans who went to work there every day, the U.S. government put lots of resources into building the security infrastructure of the base. But that was just the physical aspect of it. We then relied on Afghan soldiers to be in the watchtowers and at the gate and provide security for us. And I, as the senior American officer there, every day would walk around the outside of the compound, the inside of the outer walls, and climb the towers and talk with the Afghan soldiers to make sure they understood how important it was that they were securing not only their own senior leaders, but leaders from a couple of other countries as well. So yeah, it was a joint effort, and it worked well. It was a little bit scary for us as well, because in order to show that we trusted them, when we arrived at the Afghan base, we took off our body armor and our helmets, and we put our rifles in a wall locker next to one of our staff desks, and we walked around with a pistol and a soft cap on a compound that was, you could see into the compound from a couple of high-rise apartment buildings next door. So it was a bit of a leap of faith, but we knew it was important to show the Afghan teammates that we trusted them with our safety.
And those relationships that you built there, how are those now? Have you kept touch with those folks that you trained?
I haven't with the folks I trained. I have with some of the really key people who were there with us, our interpreters. 2 of whom have come to the United States, and I had a little bit of a part to play in helping them get their packets through the State Department. One of them, sadly, who there's no doubt in my mind that I returned safely to my family because of him. He lived in Texas for 2 years, went back to help his wife with their 6 children, to help her ailing parents, and then this situation emerged, and now he's stuck there.
That's what I was going to ask you next, if there are some who are still trying to get out. And
yes,
it sounds like,
and we're working every day to do that. I've had a couple of sleepless nights where I've been in the middle of a chain of folks who are working at people on the ground, talking to a friend of mine in D.C., talking to me, mostly by Signal app, and then via Facebook Messenger to my interpreter in Afghanistan. So it's a really bizarre little network, because information's coming from Kabul to D.C. to me, back to Kabul, to try to keep him safe and try to help him find a way out. We've had some frustrating evenings where we thought we had him linked up with teams who would get them out of there, and they'd hit Taliban checkpoints, and they just couldn't find a way out.
What are your thoughts when you see, especially the new developments every day, concerning your, again, close friends you're trying to get out, when the Taliban says, "Oh, we're gonna do beheadings, we're going to do these horrible crimes, and we're still gonna do it, even despite what was said obviously before."
It's very disturbing, especially in a case like my interpreter. They've all got green cards. They're legal U.S. residents. Those are golden tickets, unless they fall into the hands of the wrong people. So he's got to be very careful to keep those secured and not show them. And then even little things like, every time I end a message string with him, which is nearly every day, my last message to him is, please delete these messages. Because we've had reports of Taliban going house to house in Kabul, not yet in his district, thank God, and seizing phones and reviewing them to see if people have had contacts with Americans or our allies.
Yeah, so a very concerning, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, very frustrating, but hopefully soon. that he'll get to come, and his family too.
Hopefully. They've had some really scary times, and I think at this point he's a combination of exhausted and really, really scared for his kids. So he's hesitant at times to even take an additional set of tips or advice, because we've been down that path several times and it wasn't a fruitful one.
Yeah, because I'm sure, as you saw, as most of us saw, the huge airlifts of one of the largest airlifts in military history, over 80,000 getting safely removed, and just hopefully soon something good will come.
I hope so.
Hopefully. Now, of course, the Afghan allies are, of course, very important to us too. And again, close ties that we've seen you build those. Obviously, other deployed folks have had those same relationships. Once they come back, obviously dealing with a lot of emotions when they come back here. And that's what I wanted to talk about next. And in case you're joining us here on 91.9 FM, we're talking with Major General Walt Lord, who's the military advisor in residence here at Austin Peay at the Newton Military Family Resource Center. We're talking about that adjustment that they're making coming back. So the soldiers that you're meeting as they're coming back, what sort of experiences are they having in that adjustment period you're seeing?
Yeah, I would say that the biggest factor for our Afghan veterans is their doubt as to whether their service mattered. And I can tell you, a memory that will be forever emblazoned in my mind, and I know lots of fellow Afghan veterans have the same. I was an individual volunteer, an individual deployer, as I said. I didn't go with a unit that I was a member of. And when I arrived, within a couple of days at Camp Phoenix, which was the FOB, the Forward Operating Base that I lived on and received my administrative support from, we got a message that there would be a memorial ceremony that evening. So I went to it. I had never been to one before, and it's a chilling experience, especially the first time. You've got a mass formation of American soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and the first sergeant or the senior non-commissioned officer will call roll as if it's like any other unit formation. And they'll call a name, and a soldier will yell out here, and they'll call another name, and a soldier will yell out here. And they'll do that 2 or 3 times. And then they'll call a name and there will be silence. Smith, silence. John Smith, silence. Sergeant John Smith, silence. And then taps is played. And that is a very, very moving experience. And then there will be the ceremony where the unit leadership will talk about who that service member was and what they did and about their families. And then one by one, and it will take hours because nearly everyone will do it, thousands of service members will file by that iconic display that we've all seen pictures of, the pair of boots with the upside-down rifle with the helmet on top. But the most moving part is the photograph in front of those boots, because often it's a young kid, freckle-faced, who would have had a bright future. And you've got soldiers who are just moved beyond words, because just the day before they had talked with that soldier about how excited they were to be going home and their aspirations and seeing their family again. So you've got now all of these veterans, 800,000 who served in Afghanistan, who have those memories, who are now maybe wondering, was it worth it? Was it worth my time? Was it worth their sacrifice? And that's one of the things we're struggling with. And then when you have the additional factor of certain Afghan deployers who have worked hand in hand with Afghan interpreters, many of whom are just like me, where we'd be on the road every single day on some really hairy roads in and around Kabul. And about 15 minutes before every trip, we would bring the interpreter in and show them the route we were going to take and where we were going. And I can tell you, at least on 3 or 4 occasions during my time, the interpreter said, "You don't want to be on that road this afternoon." They knew why. We didn't want to press them because we didn't want to compromise them. But there was no doubt that interpreter got me home to my wife and kids. And I'm hoping I can do the same for him.
Definitely. Hopefully so. And that toll of bringing that back, that really emotional connection, and now trying to, again, deal with seeing what you're seeing and then trying to have life and do life things here, trying to go to college. Mm-hmm. Again, a lot of veterans are like, hey, I'm going to go in and better myself that way. PTSD, again, a very concerning situation, was depression and anxiety. A new article out of Stars and Stripes, fairly recent, not exactly new, talks about the concerns that 1 in 5 veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan suffering from those issues compared to 1 in 3 from Vietnam. So a concern for sure that we've got that happening. How does the Newton Family Military Resource Center help with that?
We do that in a couple of ways. First is we're a hub for resources, both here at the university and with our community partners. The Montgomery County Veteran Service Organization is active in the Newton Center. We're about to bring in the federal VA, the Veterans Administration, counselors to talk about whole health, both physical and emotional. But we also provide, I used the term FOB earlier, Forward Operating Base. We, veteran and military students, staff, and faculty at Austin Peay see the Newton Center as our FOB here on campus. It's a place where we can go and talk with like-minded people, with veterans who've been there and understand us. And we also provide a number of staff members. In fact, every one of our Austin Peay and community staff members have taken our Green Zone training. So we've all been trained on the kinds of issues that our veterans are facing, what might be going through their minds, where we can help them turn to find resources, and that our doors are always open. We've got 2 messages for those Afghan veterans. One, as I talked about, your service mattered. We did some really incredible things through our service in Afghanistan. But also, probably more importantly right now, is you're never alone. There's someone here to listen to you, whether it's a behavioral health professional or just a fellow veteran. And that all you need to do is come across the street to the Newton Center and you'll find us. As I've also told them, your tribe definitely looks different now than it did when you were standing in a formation in uniform. But that doesn't mean your tribe isn't here anymore. We just look a little different.
Yeah, and tell us more about the Newton Center, because again, obviously it's fairly new. The article I have in front of me from the Allstate from February, again, just announces, hey, it's opened its doors, and we knew it had the great services. But tell us again the full name and all the other things that come along with that center.
It's an absolute gem on this campus. It's the William E. and Sadako Newton Military Family Resource Center. I know that's a mouthful. We call it the Newton Center, and people are going to catch on to that. One of the things I've got to point out to people, though, in that long title, Military Family Resource Center, especially to veterans and military family members, is when we have the word family in that title, it means all of us. Because to a uniformed service member, when you say, we've got resources for your family, well, that's not for me. That's for my wife. It's for my kids. But we see the entire veteran and military service member and military family member group as our military family. So we've got 2 roles at the Newton Center. And I should backtrack a bit. Wilma Newton is the very generous benefactor who made the Newton Center possible. It's named after her parents. Master Sergeant William Newton was a post-World War II soldier in occupied Japan. Sadako, Wilma's mother, was a Japanese citizen then. They came here, made Clarksville home. Wilma is not a veteran, but obviously a military family member and an alum of Austin Peay. She wanted to make a substantial gift, and she wanted to focus it on that military family here at Austin Peay. So what we've got is sort of a one-stop shop for services for our military-affiliated students. Everything from helping them get enrolled to providing academic counseling for their 4 years while they're here, to that safe space, that FOB, to career services to help them find meaningful employment after they graduate. And the secondary role is, as I said, just to be that place where they can come and study together. We've got a great computer lab, a great lounge and conference room. They can come and just spend time with fellow veterans and service members.
Great. And that's, again, located right next door to Johnny's.
It is. It's a great
You
spot.
can go get a burger. No. And thanks so much again for joining us. Major General Walt Lord is with us here in the WAPX-FM studios. And this is Micca Terrell. And we're having a great conversation about, again, the Newton Family Military Resource Center. And, again, what the great things it's offering. I wanted to touch on, too, again, a very concerning statistic about the suicide prevention. Obviously, the VA reports that we have, the suicide and the risk of death, particularly, and this is a new study I found, that it says the veterans who served in Iraq and Afghanistan between 2001 2007, that this rate of suicide was the greatest for those soldiers the 3 years after leaving. And so obviously you're probably seeing, again, with Afghanistan, a lot of recent, coming back from their assignments. So how does the Newton Center work closely with, obviously, community resources and, of course, the campus resource, the Student Counseling Center? How do you all work together to help those soldiers, too?
Through referrals. Whenever we get a veteran student who starts to express those concerns, the anxiety, the frustration, the feeling of hopelessness, or through our own observation, we've talked with all of our students who work at our center, and we've got 8 of those amazing service members, veteran students who are now students here at Austin Peay, and they're on work study with us or they're grad assistants. We've talked with all of them and given them some pointers in recognizing veterans who may be feeling that anxiety, that hopelessness. We refer them to the services either here at Austin Peay or out in the community, and if need be, we'll walk them there to help them get that counseling.
Right, because we have the student counseling services, too. And, of course, if they're not there at the center, we want to remind everyone about the crisis call line, too, here in Clarksville, 931-648-1000, where they can call or text and get help, too. And that leads to my next question. In case a soldier is not here on campus, maybe they've gone home for the day, how can they do things on their own if they're finding themselves feeling, down and everything about what they've been through and what they're dealing with as they return to civilian life?
The first thing they should do is reach out to someone. And they don't have to be here on campus to do that. And frankly, it doesn't have to be somebody from Austin Peay to whom they reach out. If they reach out to a fellow veteran, an old battle buddy, as we call them, who's across the country by phone or text, that's fantastic, as long as they reach out to someone. And then day to day, just continue to remind themselves that our service did matter. We made a difference for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Afghans who we came into contact with every single day. We started to help civil society and civil governance to take root. We had especially profound impacts on women and girls in Afghanistan so that they could go to school for the first time in decades, so that they could hold meaningful jobs and even serve in government in their own country and provinces. Their service mattered because, and this is going to sound very, very strange, but Afghan and Iraq veterans get this. We've still got an adversary that would really like to do really bad things to American citizens, to our families. When we're over there presenting ourselves as a target for those adversaries, they're focused on us, and we can fight back. They're not focused on our families back here. So if our Afghan veterans can just remember those 2 things, we made a difference, and we protected our families here by being over there. And then if they can just take that a step further and just start to think about some of the positive things in life, because no matter how bad things are, there's always something good to think about.
As you mentioned, the women and children who got the educations that they needed, and obviously still a serious humanitarian crisis, but we can all do things to help, like support UNICEF. And again, as you're working, and as several other groups are working with humanitarian efforts to get those folks out of there, as many as they can. So definitely good. And any other resources that you'd like to share with us that you'd like to let the veterans and their families, and of course students who may have friends who are veterans, that you'd like to share with us today?
Yeah, I think right now our best, strongest partner is the Montgomery County Veterans Service Office in conjunction with the Montgomery County Veterans Coalition. The Montgomery County Veterans Service Office is a government agency. It's the county service office. They do an amazing job for us. Dr. Andrew Kester, who actually was a professor here at Austin P at one point, runs that office. And he came in on September 8th for the first time, the first monthly visit, and he's going to come back every month. Spent 5 hours in the center. We gave him some office space, and in those 5 hours, he saw 12 of our students. 8 of those students received instant and direct service from his office. 4 others had a little bit more complex issues, and he made appointments with them to come and visit him downtown. And the other organization is the Montgomery County Veterans Coalition. A good friend, Sherry Pickering, does an amazing job as executive director. And the beauty of that organization is it's an umbrella organization. So I think now she's got about 24 organizations, both governmental and non-governmental, who participate in the coalition. And she does some very magical things. And I'll share what my favorite thing is about Sherry's meetings. She holds them monthly over at Veterans Plaza. And typically there will be 15 to 18 of the member organizations in the room. And the very first thing she does is stands up and says, before we get to the formal agenda, who has a veteran in need? And almost every month, someone will raise their hands, sometimes multiple people. And she'll say, what do you got? And they'll say, I've got a veteran who needs emergency housing. And we don't do that in my organization. And Sherry will turn to the room and say, who does that? And several others will raise their hands. And at the end of the meeting, after we've covered all the formal agenda points, those organizations are linked up to help take care of those veterans. One of the most refreshing things I've found as a new native or a new citizen of Clarksville is the fact that among all of those organizations that service our military and veteran community, there's no competition. None of them are trying to get a leg up on each other for attention or for charitable giving or for services or for anything. They work so well together because they've all got the same goal in mind, to help our veterans.
Well, they're part of the tribe too. So.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes, they
so
are.
Definitely. Well, Major, thank you. Major General Walt Lord, thank you so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed our conversation with him, you can also, of course, catch this later. We'll upload to our YouTube channel. And I also want to remind everybody about you have town hall scheduled, and we have one on September 29th if you would like to attend that, and tell the folks about that too.
We do. It's September 29th at 11 o'clock in the ballroom in the University Center. One of the first things that President Licari and I talked about when I met with him on the first day that I came to work here was his desire to ensure that we weren't taking our military and veteran student population for granted. And he charged me with my primary duty of making sure that we're doing a good job of taking care of our military-affiliated students. And we had a conversation, and I asked him, have we ever asked them whether we're doing a good job of taking care of them? And he was only on the job for 2 months, so it probably wasn't a fair question.
Right.
But he said, I don't know, but if we haven't, we should. So we've scheduled this first town hall. We'll likely do these every semester. And we're going to do 2 things at that town hall. First, we're going to update that military-affiliated student community on everything we've got going on to help them be successful here. And the other is, and this is going to be the fun part for me, we're going to run what we in the military call an after-action review, an AAR. So at the end of every operation, every training event, every exercise, we gather everyone together, not just the leaders, but everyone down to the newest soldier, because everyone's perspective is important. And we basically ask 3 questions. What are we doing well that we need to continue to do? What are we doing not so well that we need to improve upon? And what are we not doing at all that maybe we should be doing to make life better for you as a military-affiliated student? So we're going to do that for a couple of hours, and it's going to be really a brainstorming session. And one of the most challenging things, and it'll be for me because I'm going to facilitate it myself, is keeping us on track and ensuring that we're not trying to get to solutions in that session. We don't have time for that. But we want to assure our students that our pledge is to get to solutions, but we want to hear all the problems first. And then we're going to hold a series of focus groups in the Newton Center, one in October, one in November, and we'll schedule more. And we'll identify all of the most common or most critical issues that are raised in the town hall, and we'll get a smaller group of students in who are affected by those issues and talk about getting to solutions. So just one of our tools that we're going to use, 1, to make sure that we're taking care of those students, and 2, to make sure that we're continually improving how we do that.
And we will follow up with you and see how those conversations go, because those are important to have, for
Absolutely.
sure. I'm glad
Please
that you're
do.
having those. Yes. So, again, thank you, Major General Walt Lord with the Newton Family Military Resource Center. I'm sorry, I'm going to get that all in there. Thank you so much for stopping by. Again, he's the Military Advisor in Residence here at Austin Peay. And I'm Micca Terrell from 91.9 Public Affairs.
Thank you. And can I say, let's go P?
Let's go P.
Awesome. Thank you.